The flashy girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Oh, Mr. Sheffield. It's a podcast about The Nanny, a hit sitcom from the 90s starring Fran Drescher, wherein we rewatch old episodes. And this week, we're watching Season 5, Episode 11, Rash to Judgment. As always, I am Sean DePasquale, joined by...
Toria Sheffield.
Toria Sheffield, the great Toria Sheffield. No relation to Maxwell Sheffield.
No.
This week, the episode, Rash to Judgment, written by Ivan Menchel. He's a real mensch. and directed by the great Dorothy Lyman. Toria, what was this one about?
This is the episode where Fran finally scores a second date with Mr. Sheffield, only to have it sabotaged by a severe full-body rash.
Yes, Fran finally, get it?
Yeah,
Fran
actually,
fine.
In the last episode when you were saying franchise, I wanted to say that Fran has created a franchise with The Nanny. Now that there's a Broadway show, and
she sure has.
You know,
she franchised it.
Yeah, but it was we were talking about some serious stuff, so I didn't interject with that. But
so this episode opens talking about Gracie's boobs.
Yeah, that's accurate. Well, basically, Gracie's just like, Fran, I've been wearing my training bra for weeks. What exactly is it supposed to train?
I just imagine Ivan Menchel in the writer's room pitching this episode and going, smoking a cigar, stubbing it out on the table and going, so we open on Gracie's titties.
Oh, God.
And they're like, Ivan, she's a child. And he's like, yeah. She's talking about a training bra. Don't be babes. Anyway, then we're going to get Michael Bolton to be in this episode.
Do you want things to sell or not? But basically, so yeah, Fran, Gracie, and Sylvia, they're in the kitchen chit-chatting. And we also established that they are eating a diet soup that Sylvia has brought over and that she has added tortellini to, rendering it no longer diet, probably. And then Val comes in and she's like, Fran, I just got 2 Michael Bolton tickets to the, not even, and it's not even to a show. It's to like sort of a very intimate sort of like evening where he will perform for a small group of people. We find out that she got them because her cousin accidentally spit gum into Michael Bolton's hair. And then while Michael Bolton was beating him up, the tickets fell out of Michael Bolton's jacket. So that's how these were
and that's how they got tickets to the Michael Bolton
Very
concert.
funny setup. Yeah. And Fran's like, oh, Val, I would go with you, but I just kind of wish this is the kind of thing like Mr. Sheffield would invite me to, it's just so romantic. And Gracie, I think very smartly suggests that Fran asked Mr. Sheffield out. She's like, Fran, he asked you out on the first date. Why don't you ask him out on the second? And Fran's like, my mother taught me to believe that the man should do the courting. And Sylvia goes,
no, this is the best.
She goes, darling, I didn't know what I was saying. It was the 60s. I was on a lot of antacids.
It's such a good joke.
Yeah. Instead of I was on a lot of acid, I was on a lot of
antacid.
Yeah. And so Fran's like, oh, well, okay. I'm gonna march in there and I'm going to ask him on a date to Michael Bolton. And she takes the tickets. And I was like, poor Val. Fran just stole her tickets when Val was inviting the two of them to go together. It was so cruel.
Well, and then Val goes, I'm no genius, but I don't think she can get tickets this late. And Sylvia, in the sickest burn that Sylvia's ever done, looks at her and goes, oh, honey, you don't need to say I'm no genius.
Yeah, you don't need the no genius part. And so in the next scene, Fran, we're at Sylvia's house, and Sylvia's actually redecorating her bathroom in a atrocious sort of what is it called? I want to say peppermint stick, candy cane aesthetic.
Yes, candy cane.
And, Fran kind of busts in and she's like, oh, Ma, like Mr. Sheffield said, yes, I can't wait. And Sylvia's like, oh, yeah, I knew it went well. What would that, love bite on your neck? And motioning to this like red spot on Fran's neck. And Fran's like, what? And she looks in the mirror and she's like, oh my God, Ma, no, it's a horrible rash. And she's like, oh my gosh. And it goes all down my body. And, she starts to panic because she has this really big momentous date with Mr. Sheffield that night, like the second date that she's literally been waiting like over 2 months for. And she actually goes into the medicine cabinet in the bathroom to find something to put on it. And she's like, "Ma, this is just anchovy paste." So Sylvia hoards like food in the cabinets. And then
everywhere.
Yeah. I loved this next scene because Fran, she goes to the pharmacy to look for something for her rash, and she goes to the counter, and the pharmacist, who is played by a comedian named Fred Stoller, and he's been in a previous episode, he's like, "Hey, I remember you. I never forget a condition." And he goes, it was ticks. No worms, no lice. You got lice. And she's like, "Can you keep it down?" And it's true. The last time she was there was for lice. And then she's like, "Can you just tell me what I can take for this?" And she shows him the rash, and he goes, "Ew, why would you show me that? It's nauseating." she's like, "Why would you even work here if you're so squeamish?" And he goes, "It's near my house." I love this guy. And so she's like, goes to a shelf and like kind of angrily grabs some ointment because he's no help. And then she turns around and she runs right into Cece, who's holding a bottle. And they each like instantly like put what they're holding behind their backs because they don't want the other person to see it. And then they both kind of do this like foot dance with each other where they're trying to get a glimpse at what the other person's holding. And basically neither of them will tell like, you know, what their condition is. And the pharmacist comes over and he's like, "I'll say what you both have, but a date with each of you will keep me quiet." Which is so unethical. Like
so unethical.
Definitely breaks a lot of professional codes. But so then Fran, she thinks about it and then she just goes, "Full body rash." And then Cece thinks about it and she goes, "Pick me up Saturday at 8. So we still don't know what Cece was there for.
No.
And then that evening we cut to Fran in the foyer, and she is in this full coverage dress, like long sleeves, high neck, because she is trying to hide her rash.
She still looks good.
Oh, she looks great, but this whole
looks
thing
fantastic. Yeah.
So we then, so she's in this full body dress, but the thing is, she is still itching like crazy. And this just gives me, this like made me itchy. Like I could hardly stand it because, you know, she's getting ready for the date and she's trying to get in all the scratching she can. And Niles is just like, "Miss Fine, like, why don't you just cancel?" And she goes, 5 years, 2 dates. I don't care if I have to lose a toe and keep it on ice in my purse. I'm going. And you know, literally she's just trying. So Mr. Sheffield comes down. He's like, "Oh, you look beautiful." And she's just like secretly trying to scratch without him noticing.
Fantastic physical comedy throughout this whole sequence, by the way. Fran really, really does a great job all the way through the date with Maxwell. Like she's so funny and she's doing such a good job, like with the itching and the trying to hide the itching and finding funny things to like scratch her body against.
Yes.
It's great.
Because we then cut to this little like small intimate performance space and they have to descend these like this really nice stairwell to get to the event space. And she's literally like, when Mr. Sheffield sees her, she just has this total look of calm on her face. And the second he turns his head, she's like scratching up against the banister, like itching, sort of like itching her butt on it, like the way a bear scratches against a tree. And then, you know, they get on the dance floor and she's like rubbing her face against his stubble because it feels so good. And then they back into someone and she literally, again, like a bear on a tree, is like rubbing up against the person behind her just the tiniest bit of relief she can find. But
she's like Baloo the bear in the Jungle Book cartoon.
Yes. But it turns out the person she's been using as a scratching post, it's Michael Bolton. And so Michael Bolton, you know, very famous musician. First, you know, was very famous.
Sucks. Michael Bolton sucks. Even in this, I was like, what fucking song is this? This is awful.
Hey, a lot of people love Michael Bolton. There's a lot of Michael Bolton fans out there. Sean.
All right. Well, if you're a Michael Bolton fan and you're listening to this episode and you're also a fan of the podcast, reach out and let us know. I want to do a quick poll. How many in our audience are Michael Bolton fans? You can show your support for Michael Bolton by using the hashtag Sean is wrong.
Oh, I'm going to use that just generally.
No.
But Michael Bolton, he was famously sort of in like metal band. So he used to have very long hair. And this was the era of his career where he had just cut it off. So there's like reference to it actually when they bump into him. But when they bump into him, she's like, oh my gosh, Michael Bolton. And she's like, but the thing is, she's still like insanely itchy. So she's like, can you write an autograph for me? So she pulls out a piece of paper and a pen, and then she puts it on, like, turns around so he can use her back as like, a support to write it on. But so she's literally just like, write to Fran, biggest fan. But then she's like, to the left, to the right, a little to the left, no, like she's trying to get him to scratch with the pen. It's like very, very
so
hilarious.
Silly. Yeah.
She, again, like this is prime Lucille Ball stuff. Like just shows the real genius of her physicality as a comedic actress.
And Fran clearly, like Fran Drescher clearly loves doing this stuff. Like she's great in all the scenes she's in, but she comes alive when she gets to do stuff like this. And it's so fun to watch.
It's so fun. And so then Michael Bolton goes up and he starts singing. And this is also, I'll get into this in trivia, but like this was a bit of a cross promotion for his new opera album, which was also very out of character for the music he normally put out, because he had started in metal, but he had been in then like a sort of ballad pop phase for a long time. And then Fran and Mr. Sheffield are like swaying to the music romantically. And, they're both facing Michael Bolton, but like he kind of has his arms around her and she's literally just using his hands to scratch her body, but making it seem like she's just like further sinking into his embrace. And he's like, you look ravishing tonight. I actually wish we were alone. And she's like, oh yeah, I can't wait to get out of this dress. But she really just means it so she can scratch her body. But he interprets it to mean like, sort of a flirtatious gesture. And so he goes, then I'll go get us a room. And I have two notes. I wrote, firstly, that's a huge step for them because they have not consummated their relationship yet. And secondly, I went, God, being a rich dude is so convenient. Like, can you imagine being in that exact situation? And you'd be like, wouldn't it be so great if we got a room? And then you'd be like, oh yeah, but a room would be like $400. We won't do that. But I mean, probably at this place, probably more. I'm sure I'm lowballing it. But so we then.
Yeah, for sure.
Be like a $1,000 room.
Mm-hmm.
We then cut to the hotel room, which is very nice.
Yes.
Mr. Sheffield is trying his best to seduce her.
He is the most horned up we've ever seen Mr. Sheffield. Like full on, like, let's go, Fran. Like it's time.
Well, and I also feel like it's like, oh, it makes sense. Like they've been dating a while now. They have an evening away from the children. Like it really would be the perfect romantic night. And so he's like trying to pour them champagne, but she's just still trying her best to scratch. And then in an effort to stall, because she has this red rash on her body, she's like, oh, we should just quickly call the kids and say we'll be late. And he's like, right now? And she's like, yeah. So she picks up a phone and she calls and she's like, hi, Gracie, sweetheart. And then she's like, oh, she wants to talk to you. And then she hands the phone to Mr. Sheffield and he's literally just like, oh my God, like, I can't believe this is happening. Like, this is not what I envisioned us doing when we came up here. So he gets on the phone with his youngest child and she's like, I'm just going to run downstairs real quick and get another autograph. And he's like, right now? And she's like, yeah. And she runs. And we then go to the doctor's clinic across the street from the hotel where she has fled to. And she is frantically itching. The nurse is like, Dr. Castelli will be in a moment. And Fran's like, Castelli? This is a matter of life or death. I need a Glickman or Schwartz. And then the doctor comes in, and in a trend that we have been seeing constantly, another very, very popular, beloved actor who is now insane. Scott Baio comes in. He's young. He's fresh-faced. He was very charming in his day. And Scott Baio, famous as Chachi in Happy Days. He sort of plays this like almost Doogie Howser-esque character.
Conservative douchebag Scott Baio.
Yes, but not back then. We had no idea.
He was good.
He was charming, boyish, cute. And he's playing a very like endearing, funny character, which is, again, sort of a Doogie Howser guy. He comes in, he's very baby faced, and she's like, wait a second. Frankie Castelli, and she's like used to babysit him in junior high, and he's like, yeah, junior high, that was the best 6 years of my life. And then he also establishes that this is his first day on the job ever, so she's like now extra worried because she's like, oh my god, not only is he inexperienced, he's an idiot. Like I know him to be an actual stupid person, and he is my doctor. and it you know, he looks at the rash, and there's this older, more experienced nurse in the room, and we see his face like break out into horror. Like he's so grossed out, and he clearly wants to run out of the room. And the nurse is like behind Fran's back, like, no, stay. And that's all going on behind her back. And then she's like, doctor, can you do anything? And he's like, yes. He's like, I'm going to give you a shot of cortisone. It's going to relieve the itching right away. And so he gives her the shot, and she's like, oh my God, I already feel better. Thank you so much. And she like runs out of the room. And then he's like, oh, wait, I forgot to ask you have any allergies to medication. And so he runs out. And then he also struggles to remove his doctor gloves, and the nurse has to help him out of them. And then we go back to the hotel. I was not expecting any of this.
No, me neither. This is there's a lot. I have a lot of thoughts.
Mr. Sheffield.
But first there's Mr. Sheffield's talking to Gracie. I really like that part too.
Oh yeah, she's still like going on and on and on, and just delightedly chatting about her day to her father. And he's like, "Okay, darling." He's like, "Can you put Niles on the phone to me?" And then Niles takes the phone, and he just screams, "Put her to bed!" and then you know he hangs up, and he hears Fran back in the room, and she like calls out to him in a sultry voice, and she's like, "Oh, Mr. Sheffield, like I'm back." And he leaves the bathroom, and he goes over and he pours some champagne, and then he turns around, and we see her for the first time. Her whole body has like quadrupled in size because of an allergic reaction
to cortisone. She's like, her whole body is swollen. And then the show like slides into fat shaming territory that feels like very low hanging fruit for the remainder of the episode.
She sees her in a mirror. She sees her. Well, I guess to be fair though, like that is a tenet of, I mean, we wouldn't do this nowadays, but it is a tenet of Fran's character to always be dieting and always, and always making jokes at Sylvia's expense. So
sure.
Yes, Fran fine, realistically, like this would have been a horrific turn of events for her specifically. Again, we wouldn't do it now.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
But she sees herself in a mirror, hyperventilates so far that so hard that she passes out and falls on top of him. We go back to the hospital, and now everyone's there, like Niall, Cece, Sylvia. They're all like gathered around Fran. And the nurse comes in, and she's like, Miss Fine, we've traced your initial rash back to a squash allergy. And Niall, she's like, Niles, could it be the chicken you made last night? And he's like, no, that was just chicken and sage. And Cece's like, sage? But I'm allergic to sage. And he's like, oh, really?
No, this was the best line. He goes, oh, I thought time was your enemy. Yeah. Which is such a clever play on words. I really enjoyed that. I was like, ooh, I like what they did there.
And I will say, while there is, this fat shaming thing, Mr. Sheffield does say, he's like, but no, Miss Fine, I love you. There's just 4 more of you to love. Which was like very kind of him to say.
I guess.
I know you're right. But so then Sylvia looks very guilty, and she's like, wait a second, doctor, a squash allergy. So if someone say added pumpkin tortellini filled with squash to a soup, would that have caused the problem? And I just wrote yum yum. Pumpkin tortellini filled with squash sounds so good. And so we realized Sylvia's the culprit. And we cut back to a few days later in the kitchen. Fran's in a bathrobe. She's back to her normal size. And Mr. Sheffield comes in and he suggests that maybe they try to pick up where they left off in that hotel room that night. And Fran's like, I think, maybe if it's a sign we should wait, we'll know when the time is right, which really surprised me, right? But then when he leaves, she emerges from behind the counter and we realize that her butt is still super swollen. And that was definitely the impetus for her wanting to wait.
Yeah, that was funny. I like that reveal.
That was the episode. And she had a very juicy butt, I thought. I was like, I don't mind that.
She looked like she flew to Brazil and had some implants put in.
Mm-hmm. That would be very in vogue right now, actually.
Yeah, I know.
But that's so, I know. That's why. Yeah.
All right, so you know what that means, though, because we've said all of the things there is to say about the episode. It's time for segments. And now, segments.
So, segments.
Yeah, no, I think we should move on to segments.
We can move on to our segments.
And now, segments.
Segments with Sean and Toria.
Beep, 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 beep. I love it. All right, we are here. We are back. It's time for segments. First up, favorite lines and moments. Toria, what do you got?
I just really like how this show often portrays doctors to be total doofuses. And after Fran has the allergic reaction and they're all back at the clinic, Scott Baio goes, this reaction happens sometimes, with cortisone, prednisone, Tolbarone, and then he cracks up at his own joke and nobody laughs. And it just they always have the doctors be these jokesters. Like, remember when the plastic surgeon looks at her butt and goes, "Oh no, there's a crack in it."
And the shrink is quite a yuckster. That was good. And also Sylvia's reaction there, she goes, "Doctor, I have an enlarged daughter. Do something."
That's literally my next line.
I have an enlarged daughter. It's a very funny line.
And also something very on brand for Sylvia. Yeah, and honestly, because so much of what was fantastic about this episode was physical comedy. I mean, it was just like, truly that image of Fran descending the stairwell and trying to steadily scratch herself on everything. Like, to me, that was like iconic and like that says it all, right? That's better than almost any line that I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, the only other two that I had was when Sylvia first points out the hickey, that's not a hickey. Fran goes, "Oh my God, it goes all the way down my body." And Sylvia goes, "Mazel tov, darling." Like she thinks the hickey goes all the way down her body. It's very funny. And then
so thrilled
I also like Fran telling the doctor guy, Frankie, she's like, "How did you become a doctor? You couldn't even play Operation." And he goes, "Real life people are bigger than that little cardboard guy, Fran."
Yes, I love that too. He's like, that's his reassurance. Real people are bigger than that little guy. so funny.
Stupid.
I know. It also made me miss Doogie Howser. I don't know if you ever watched it. I'm probably, again, our younger listeners might not have, but the whole premise of that show was, it wasn't a sitcom. It was like an hour long. A boy genius who's like 13, 14 years old who is a doctor. It was a great premise for a show.
Our listeners might not be familiar with the original, but some of them may be watching Doogie Kamehameha on Disney Plus, as I am, and loving it.
What is that?
Doogie Kamehameha. It is a reboot of Doogie Howser, and it takes place in Hawaii, and it's about a little Hawaiian girl. And her last name is Kamealoha, Lahela Kamealoha. And the Doogie reference is literally in the first episode. Someone in her hospital goes like, "Yeah, we call her Doogie," like that old TV show. And that's it. Like, but it is Doogie Howser. Like, she is a genius, like 15-year-old girl working in a hospital in Hawaii. It's much more comedic than the original. But it is a delight. Highly, highly recommend. It is like our light, fun, airy show that we watch. There's 2 seasons. I adore it. So if you're not watching it, watch it. I mean, it's very light.
It has Ronnie Chang in it.
Yeah, dude, it's got so many good comedic performances. Ronnie Chang kills. He's actually the guy who delivers the Doogie line. And he does a great job. It's great. It's a great show.
Oh, I love it. Okay. So those are some of our favorite parts.
Oh my God. Maybe we'll start a Doogie Howser podcast.
Oh my God.
It'll be called the original.
It'll be called Teach Me How to Doogie.
Oh my God. Yeah, we could watch the original and then we could lead up and watch the new ones. Teach me how to doogie. I love it.
Okay.
Oh my God. Okay.
So for Yiddish, I did not clock any in this episode.
No, same. Me neither.
Okay. And then for Nanny Trivia, I delve a little into this Michael Bolton's opera album, which was a surprise to me. But I, again, was not very, I was not old enough to be following a lot of pop culture at the time. But so as we said, Michael Bolton starts off as like a hair metal guy. Then he transitions into like pop and ballads and kind of like, piano playing romance songs. And then suddenly this year, which was 1998, he releases an opera album, which, I mean, if you can imagine, like, I'm trying to think like.
Well, do you remember when Billy Joel announced that he was going to do only classical music for a while? It's like that.
Well, no. But the thing is, that's not. I'm trying to think of like a more contemporary. It would be like if who's that guy married to Chrissy Teigen, who everybody loves?
John Legend.
It'd be like if John Legend was like, I'm going to do opera now, like just very like what? But so he released.
Toria, red alert. All 4 seasons of Doogie Howser MD are on Disney Plus.
Shut up.
We could do this. God. And it's only 4 seasons. It's way less of a commitment than what we just did.
But they're hour-long episodes. So
are they hour-longs?
I think they were like 45 minutes.
Nope, 25.
Holy shit.
25. 4 seasons, 25 minutes each. Let's do this.
You know what I'm excited for? Was it Max Casala?
Yes.
He was like, hey, yo, what you doing? And it's like, what the fuck?
Gold, how's it going, Dolly?
Are you guys in like Sacramento? Like, who is this kid?
Hey, Dolly, it's me, your best friend. Oh my God, please. Oh, Toria, we're doing this. We're doing this. Special announcement, folks. We just figured out what our follow-up podcast is going to be.
Yeah, but you know what? We change our minds like the wind. So I'm
oh no, I'm into this.
Teach me. I know. And then the picture will be us back to back in doctor's coats with stethoscopes, and it'll be called "Teach Me How to Doogie" with sunglasses.
Yes. I love it.
Anyway, so Michael Bolton, he releases a opera album, and it's called "My Secret Passion." The Areas. And the thing is, it really was his secret. First of all, an aria is
his area. Gross.
An aria is a solo piece for a singer in an opera. So he released a album of solos, and it's called My Secret Passion because it really was like he basically had in like several years before, like 3 years before, been asked to perform like a song at an opera in Italy. And he didn't know anything about opera, but he took it very, very seriously. And he like delved into like the language, like the Italian and the theory behind it. And he just really did it so he would be prepared for this one song. And it ended up sparking like a true lifelong passion. Like he became immersed in opera and he started studying Italian and he started studying French. And so it no one really knew he was that into it. So him releasing this album called My Secret Passion was like very honest and vulnerable. And on Wikipedia, it says The Areas is the first classical album by Michael Bolton featuring the Philharmonic Orchestra.
Wow.
Due to lack of substantial promotion, the album peaked on the Billboard Top 200 at an extremely low 112, marking the end of the period of chart success for Bolton, though it did rank very high on like the classical music charts. And there was some, I want to say the reviews were mixed, but they were actually less than mixed. One of the top reviews of the time was Bolton's passion for opera should have stayed a secret, which was really neat. And there's just a lot of music critics being like, here's the thing. Michael Bolton does not have the vocals. Like he's a very sort of raspy, sultry voice. He's just not bored with like the pipes for opera. So they were sort of like his passion for this comes through, but he had no business in this space. But then I did see on Amazon there, here's like sort of a counter to that. Music critic Robert Levine wrote at the time. He wrote, "Of course, Michael Bolton, the world's greatest mimic, should not be allowed within 200 yards of an opera house. What with his bluesy rasp instead of the round, pure sound associated with opera. But he's no fool, and he has studied the languages, Italian and French, the idiom, and the text of all of these well-known, oft-recorded areas. He claims to love this music, and I, for one, believe him. He hits all the notes, occasionally too hard and invariably with the wrong gloves, but he nails them all, including a very weird high C at the end of Act 1 Boheme duet with Renee Fleming, of all people. What's more and better is his emotional involvement in each area. He sings off the words in a way that makes Bocelli, the other crossover pop star du jour, look like an imposter with a pretty voice, which is what he is. To wrap up, this is a valiant try that can never, because of the equipment, be successful on operatic terms, but as an artistic endeavor, even one that ultimately fails, this is to be praised." So it was like A for effort.
Wow.
It was just like, you know what, like this guy clearly, but that's like the best of the reviews, right?
That's sad.
But hey, Creed. I understand like why this was a flop. Like I think it does suck when people want artists, like musical artists, to do the same thing again and again and again, because like if they're an interesting artist or an artist working on a high level, they're going to change and their work is going to reflect that. So yeah, we should all just go listen to Yoko Ono's latest album. My big Yoko defense. But okay, so the Fran or the Season, I have to admit, I did not really prepare for this answer. I just usually I like prepare a little. I like really think about it. So I'm going to have to wing it.
I didn't either.
I think I sort of related to the Fran in that I get rashes all the time. I'm like a gross person. Like
really?
I'm just like a gross person. Like I get finger rashes because I have a sun allergy. Like I'll get like a scab behind my ear sometimes. I don't really know. I'm just a scabby, itchy person.
Jesus Christ. Holy shit. Jesus Christ. What the fuck is happening?
Sometimes the tooth will fall out.
You have leprosy?
No. I just think in general, like, this is a weird thing where I have always felt like a imposter as like like my femininity is fake because underneath I'm just a scabby, itchy person.
Wow. Who did I think that I was the most like? Nobody is the answer. I also didn't prepare very much, and I really didn't relate to anyone in this one. This was like a weirdly, but sometimes there's episodes that are like so specific that it's like it's not general enough for me to be like, oh yeah, I guess, because I'm not really allergic to stuff. So yeah, I mean, I guess I was like the Dr. Frankie in that I too have jobs that I feel I am underqualified to have. Well, I don't feel that way, but I clearly am.
And you probably would try to make a joke.
I would probably try to make a joke. On that note, speaking of jokes, if you like the jokes on this show,
speaking of jokes, Sean's a big old joke.
I'm a big old joke. Send help. But also like and subscribe. Listen, Spotify Podcasts is lit. It is where it's at right now. Majority of our audience is on Spotify Podcasts now, I'm happy to report, beating even Apple Podcasts. So yeah, if you're on there and you haven't already, please like and subscribe and leave a little rating and a 5-star review. You can do all of this now on Spotify Podcasts, apparently. So please do that. It really helps our show and it makes Spotify know how much we're loved, and then they'll give us some more ads, and then maybe we can make some more money, and then maybe I don't have to go marching around on strike with the Writers Guild, I can just retire on all the fat podcast money, which right now is about $100 every 2 years.
Well, but if we keep it up, we could have a podcasting empire with Doogie Howser, dinosaurs. We could do your
Herman's head.
Herman's head.
Yep.
Then it would just we'd become so jaded. We'd be like, oh, my life is just watching TV, and which is actually our dream.
And talking about it. Yeah.
But now we do it for money.
And we're jaded. All right. But on that note, thank you for listening. Find us at Oh Mr. Chef Pod on Instagram and on Twitter, which is burning cesspool. Or you can send us an email at ohmrsheffieldpodcast@gmail.com. I know we've gotten some other ones, and I've been reading them at the end of every episode, but not the last two, and I apologize for that. We'll get back to that next week. And on that note, goodbye.
The Flushing girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
I go, Miss Fine.